You're listening to the Decidedly podcast. Our guest today is Sarah Knight, known as the anti-guru for her profane approach to giving practical advice. If explicit language isn't for you, please feel free to skip this episode and instead just tune into tomorrow's highlight clip where we bleeped out all of the explicit content. If you're not offended by explicit language, hold on to your hat. There's plenty of it coming at you. That's all for now. Let's get into the episode. I'm Morgan, your producer, and this is Decidedly.
You know, we were talking last night. I did some research after our discussion. You had asked me, we were on the way somewhere in past a Lisa's fried chicken and seafood place.
Yeah.
And you made the comment, which I thought was funny. You made the comment because they're pretty rough looking, let's say.
They are certainly niched to a price point.
Yeah, that's a
at
really
the bottom of what you can how you can profitably make chicken.
Yeah, and your question to me was, do you think they're trying to do better and failing, or do you think that's what they're trying to, they're trying to look this way, which is dilapidated, let's say.
Yeah. Like, do you think they're trying to be they're trying to improve and they're just not hitting the mark? Or?
Well, I can tell you for certain that Lisa's fried chicken and seafood places are not trying to be Chick-fil-A. That's
what I'm saying.
Yeah, so they're not trying to be Chick-fil-A and failing at it. I think they've dialed in that we want to be the low-cost provider of the fried chicken and seafood in certain communities, and they're killing that. I did some research when I got home.
Okay.
You want to know how many locations of the Lisa's fried chicken and seafood there are?
Okay, because I thought there were like 2 or 3.
I thought there was one.
Okay.
I thought it was that one in this really rough part of town,
right.
And it was that, and it's not. There are 29 locations.
29
of the Lisa's fried chicken and seafood.
So if you don't have a Lisa's chicken and seafood near you, every single one.
Describe this place.
I'm assuming they all look the same.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
None of the signs work appropriate.
No.
All of the awnings are faded.
Yeah, let me put it in context. They are uniquely positioned, usually between like a muffler shop and a wig store, or a pawn shop and a liquor store.
They're never in a good side of town.
It's not next to the Pottery Barn.
No,
it's they're rough.
You're not going from Whole Foods to Lisa's Chicken,
right? So I pulled up some reviews of the Lisa's Chicken.
You're ragging on Lisa's.
Lisa's Chicken and Seafood. The first review I saw was, "Don't let the location scare you."
And you have to say that. So if you've never seen one, now you've seen it in your mind.
No, you know. You ready? So that's how the first one started. The second one started, "This location has always been my go-to spot for good fried chicken. However, this past Sunday night, while placing an order, I saw a worker handling chicken wearing flip-flops."
It is Lisa's Chicken and Seafood is the Waffle House
of chicken and seafood.
Yeah. Okay. But not as good as Waffle House.
Yeah. Well, I don't know why this person felt compelled to write a review mentioning the flip-flops. If you walk into a Lisa's Chicken and Seafood, you've got to be expecting that they're wearing flip-flops. No, that's got to come with the territory.
The thing that we were talking about last night is like, they have to consciously decide to not improve the quality or the service or the cleanliness. They have to consciously decide. And it's almost so much that if they did improve,
people wouldn't go there.
It wouldn't. It'd be like when McDonald's did their Angus burgers and people like, shut up. You're not making good food now. You're not making good food.
Don't start now.
Doing? Yeah, come on. Make me a crappy burger and give it to me. Let's go.
I think you made the comment that they're not going to fix up the front of the store. They're not trying to get robbed or something. They're looking rough.
They're trying to go for us.
Having said that, I've never stepped foot in one, but after all of my research, people just rave on this. I kind of want to go. I kind of want to.
You know what? Here's the thing that I do respect about them. I've never tried their chicken. I've never been in their restaurant. I drive by as quickly as I can, is that they don't give a fuck. They really don't give a fuck.
I didn't read you the third comment, which said it was pet friendly. It's an indoor restaurant.
They probably have live chickens in the back. Our guest today is an expert on not giving a fuck. You may remember Sarah Knight from episode 77, Deciding Not to Give a Fuck, where we discuss boundaries, to-do list management, and building habits that serve you and breaking the ones that don't. Today, we had her back on the show to talk about something we've all experienced, growing the fuck up. Sarah's known as the anti-guru for her profane approach to giving practical life advice. She graduated from Harvard and worked for 15 years as a top book editor in New York City. In 2015, she left corporate publishing to go freelance, moved to the Dominican Republic, and her Fucks Given guides have been published in 31 languages and appeared on bestseller lists all over the world with 3 million copies printed. Her acclaimed series of self-help books includes the runaway hits, Calm the Fuck Down, Get Your Shit Together, and her latest book, Grow the Fuck Up. She hosts the popular podcast, No Fucks Given. Today, she was on our podcast. We really got into what it means to be an adult, why you should care about being an adult, and how to become a more responsible person. She's witty, she's funny, she's a great writer. So check out her book. If you don't order it on Amazon before the show, by the end of the show, you definitely will. Stick around, learn something, laugh a little bit. I'm Sanger Smith with my dad, Sean Smith. This is Decidedly. I have to ask you about something that Sean and I were BSing.
We were just talking about this before you came on.
So okay. I was on Instagram, and I see this guy, and he says, "You know how I make $220,000 per month in my coaching business? Well, I didn't get there by," and then he lists out all of the things that you would think you would need to do, right? I didn't get there by calling leads and setting appointments,
getting clients,
doing ads and Facebook and YouTube and blah, blah, blah. You know, I got there by, and then of course he's selling you his trick or whatever. And so my thought is, if I figured out how to make, which I haven't, $220,000 per month doing basically no work, I'm keeping that a secret.
Yeah, I'm keeping that under wraps.
That's for me.
Here's the thing. I wouldn't be on Instagram. I'd be on my yacht. You know,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh, when we took a look at this guy, and there's no chance he's making $220,000.
Yeah. There was actually just a big article in the New York Times about how passive income is not everything that the internet wants you to believe it is. It's pretty interesting because a lot of people think they can just kind of magically generate hundreds of thousands of dollars a month and not have to do anything, and it just doesn't work that way.
I see those all the time. They'll send me stuff. They're like, here's how I use Chat GPT to write content, and then this other app will post it, and you can just sell books. All the whatever it is.
Yeah,
it's like, nah, I don't think
that's offensive. That's
yeah,
what it is.
Right. You know what? As an author, a part of you is probably thinking, give it a shot. Go for it.
I'd love to see what you come up with. Sure, it'll be at 5 stars on Amazon.
That Chat GPT book will really,
I'm sure it'll take off. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The idea with passive income, right? There's this allure to the story, and this is across all aspects of life. You can get all the rewards with none of the work, right? You get this magic weight loss pill. It will solve all your problems. Well, you can get passive income. You don't have to do anything.
Investment returns with no risk.
Yeah, investment returns with no risk. And it's the thing with passive income is it's either not that much income or it's hardly passive.
Exactly. Yeah, that was actually the point behind this article. And they spoke to a few entrepreneurs and people who were very candid about the fact that they tried to start a business and thought that it was going to be this amazing, passive income thing. And they were like, this is so much work. I can't do it. It's too much work. And then other people who were like, yeah, it was passive income of $9 a month.
It was one coffee a week. It was great.
So your position is that there's not an AI app that's going to be able to write the next Shape Your Life Up book?
Never say never. I certainly fear our robot overlords, but I don't think they're quite there yet.
When did you write your first book?
The first book came out in December of 2015.
Was that before you moved to Dominican Republic, or were you still in New York at the time?
It was basically concurrent. So I had been writing it. It came out in December. We moved in January of 2016 to the DR. It's a very busy time.
That's a lot of stress all at once.
Do you think it's easier to write in the environment that you're in now versus being in New York City?
I really don't. I have a pretty strict, get into my own little zone and do my work. So I can kind of do that anywhere. As long as I can have quiet and focus, it doesn't really matter where I am. The only thing is that when I was in New York writing the first book, my husband was working from home at the same time. And so it just was a little bit slightly distracting to have somebody that I wanted to talk to around, as opposed to, being able to ignore coworkers that I didn't want to talk to when I was working in an office. But it doesn't make that much of a difference to me.
What caused you to want to write that first book?
Well, that was, out of desperation. I was peaking in my career at the time as a book editor, and I wanted very much to keep doing that for the rest of my career. I thought that was my path, but I was incredibly panicking and depressed and just having kind of a mental health crisis at the time. And I thought, I went through all of the things, what is it about my life that is causing these issues to come to the surface? And I finally realized that it was my job, and that it was that I didn't want to work for a corporation. I didn't want to have a boss. I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to make my own decisions, take my own risks, be responsible for them if they didn't pan out, and basically be able to show up every day as myself, instead of having to kind of, be a little bit more subdued in an office setting. I'm sure you can tell from the titles of my books that I'm not a particularly subdued person. And it wasn't really appropriate in the corporate workplace that I was in. So so that was kind of the impetus behind quitting my job, having the idea for the first book, The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck. And once I wrote that and it came out into the world and it started to take off, and it was a slow burn, it wasn't a bestseller right away. It was one of those things that somebody read it and told their friend, and somebody read it and told their friend. I did a couple interviews and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And months later, it really took hold. And by then I was living in the Dominican Republic. I, was asked to consider the idea of writing a follow-up. And I thought, well, what more do I have to say? And now we're 6 books in. So the new one's coming out April 4th.
Wow. It's so cool to experience the organic growth like that. When I go online, I always see someone that fools me with their, they've got, 250,000 followers or whatever. And it looks like they're really prolific and they have this audience that they've built up, and then you dig into it and you're like, oh, they got 24 likes on this most recent post. Nobody actually cares, but they've made it look like they have an audience or that they've got this organic following, and that they don't. And
that's something I think about a lot, actually, because it's been such I don't want to call it a struggle, but it has been an ongoing challenge to build a profile, to build a profile on social media, to get visitors to my website, to get people to listen to my podcast, and of course to buy the books. And often when I'm sitting there going, geez, I'm at, I don't know, the 35,000 Instagram followers on one of these accounts. And I have to remember the days when I had 10, I have to remember that I did this. And even if I wish it was 200,000, these people are engaged, they're commenting, they're liking, and it's not this kind of smoke and mirrors. I definitely can see how.
Yeah, you're not faking it.
I'm in the process of TikTok, which is a whole new world.
You're braver than me.
And, I've done it, put myself out there, getting kind of consistent number of views. And it's not, it's 300 to 600, depending on how good the video is or something. And everyone's smiling 1,500. I'm like, oh, that one, people like that one. Well, if what people who don't, aren't involved in the back end of this stuff don't probably know is that you can boost video. So for example, my book publisher can go in and say, I'm going to apply a spend, I don't know how much it is, but a few cents a view or something, and see if I can get this out in front of more eyeballs. And so they've done that on one post, and it got like 115,000 views. But it wasn't getting people commenting. It was clearly just TikTok pushes it to your feed. The minute the video starts, it counts as a view. But that person isn't necessarily engaged with it because they're not your audience. Whereas I happened to do one video that was, I guess, kind of controversial, and it got 250,000 organic views, no boost from my publisher, but like tons of people commenting, and partly because half of them really disagreed with me. And half of them didn't. The internet feeds in controversy, but it was a big lesson to me when I saw the one that they boosted go really high in the views, but nobody was engaging with it. And I think that's where you're getting some of the false, some of those, those profiles out there that seem like they have a lot behind them, but they're probably paying for views or,
they're doing something weird. Yeah, they're doing something weird. I think it like cuts through. You can kind of tell when something gets pushed to you. On Instagram ads, for example, it'll say like sponsored. And then there are TikTok ads and it says, ad, or they'll do like hashtag ad. But that's not all of the ones that are boosted. So there's like the ads, and then there's the boosts, and sometimes the boosts don't come clearly as an ad. But it'll be like, recommended for you. It's like, I don't care about this, How did I get this recommended to me? I think that's what it is. It's like, you can kind of sniff it out as a user when you go, I didn't want this. Like, why are you presenting me with this nonsense?
Yeah, it's like, every once in a while I order a baby shower gift for somebody, and then I just get assaulted with, emails from the Babies R Us and Pottery Barn Baby and Bye Bye Baby. And I'm like, I'm 44. I have no children. I'm never going to.
Read my metadata, please.
I am not your target audience. I buy a baby gift once every 3 years. I buy a baby gift. So.
Yeah, we were talking with Mike Pitchy a while back, and he's a film producer, and he told us, he goes, I'll intentionally post people who write me and just want to, negative review my film. They're like, oh, this film is garbage, and he'll just post it, and just people interact with it.
He gets way more engagement on the negative review post than when he posts positive reviews. So he'll post one and it'll be like, it's someone gave him 5 stars, said it was the best movie they ever watched. Nobody likes it. And then he posts, some guy goes, fuck you for your movie. It's like, everybody likes it.
Yeah, I do that sometimes. I put people on blast in my Instagram stories because every once in a while I get somebody who like tags me in a bad review. And I'm like, don't tag me. I don't need to see that. Or sometimes people will send, I would say 95% of the interaction that I get, at least on Instagram where people seem friendlier, is positive. But every once in a while, somebody will just reach out to me to tell me I suck. And or they'll say like, I bought your book at the airport at LAX, and after 10 pages, I knew it was garbage, so I put it in the trash can where it belongs. And I'll just repost it, and I'll be like, I got royalties on that sale, so thanks. And that's when people in my feed get all excited about like standing up for me and also like telling me that I'm great and not to worry. I'm like, I'm not asking you to tell me how great I am, but it's hilarious that it really causes people to want to engage. And it's also like kind of, like I say, it's hilarious. It's actually kind of dangerous and disturbing that is how you get engagement on social media. But it also just gives me pleasure to put people on blast sometimes because I'm like, you came for me,
It's
you
so
fucked
funny.
around and now you're going to find out.
Yeah, good for you. I mean, it's like the only way to think about it is, oh, that's hilarious. I ruined someone's day and I made a few bucks too. What a great one. There's this wall between us and physically when we're on the internet. There's no longer this threat that a physical altercation could occur, right? If we're sitting across from the dinner table from one another and we're insulting each other like people do online, people are going to start throwing stuff, We're going to start spilling wine on each other. We're going to start pushing and shoving.
How you get taken out of the will.
Things. Yeah, like there's this threat that things could get physical, and on the internet that's removed, and so people think there are no rules. It's like the same thing happens, I think, in road rage. Is there's more of a threat of physical violence in when you're in a car, right? You could get out of the car and they could get out of the car. But when you're both in the car, there's these walls. And so you kind of dissociate from their existence a little bit. And people will buck up and they'll say things, and it's like, if the window comes down, all of a sudden they're nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to be on the receiving end of somebody deciding to sideswipe me at 65 miles an hour because I yelled at them out the window.
You spent a lot of the work that you've done writing about boundaries and those walls and things like that. Did you find that when you're writing that there were boundaries you had to establish for yourself, or things that crept into your personal life that you were writing? Here's my advice. Then you go, oh shit, I need to take this advice myself.
Yeah. Actually, with the new book, which is called Grow the Fuck Up, How to Be an Adult and Get Treated Like One, there's 3 pillars of adulting that I talk about. It's maturity, responsibility, and accountability. And maturity is more behavior oriented. It's self-awareness and self-control. And responsibility is more action oriented, doing what you said you were going to do when you said you were going to do it, being reliable and dependable, taking initiative. Accountability combines both, and that's taking responsibility for those actions and behavior, right? And admitting when you're wrong, and accepting criticism, and apologizing, and cleaning up your mess. And that's the part that I really, as I was writing the book, was realizing, like, I'm pretty fucking adult. Like, I have a good basis of expertise in which to tell other people, how they could improve their lives by acting more like a grown-up. But accountability is definitely my weaker area, because boy, do I not like to be told that I'm wrong. And boy, do I not like to admit it when I messed up. And so I kind of was writing that part of the book, realizing like what it is that makes me uncomfortable about taking criticism, and what kind of reaction it gets out of me, and how I talk myself down is how I'm, trying to show other people how to do that in the book. But like, I definitely was kind of working on that part and thinking to myself, I could use some improvement here.
Do you deny that it happened, or do you absorb it? Like, if somebody gives you, let's say, not so great feedback, how do you react to it?
Well, so that's it. Like, what I was realizing when I was writing is that one of the reasons one might have a negative reaction to that is just because no matter how well intentioned, criticism can feel like you being told you're not good enough, you are a failure, you are bad, and some people can just let it roll off their backs, and I congratulate those people. It's no coincidence that I spent most of my career as an editor, where it was my job to tell other people how to improve their work, and not get, the feedback myself. And now that I'm a writer, I'm on the end of that, that kind of constructive criticism all the time. But I think that it's kind of a sliding scale, right? It starts with, okay, here's how you deal with constructive criticism, and here's how you can not feel personally attacked by it. And you can kind of pause and take it in and remember that 2 things can be true at the same time. You could have done a very good job on your first draft of something, and there could still be room for improvement. And like, understanding that to talk yourself down from that immediate reaction. And then there's like, when you've really messed up and like you are being confronted by somebody saying like, you did do a bad thing, you did disappoint me, you did fail at this, and having to separate the emotional reaction of that, like shame or sadness or or fear in yourself, with, okay, how am I gonna learn from this? And how am I going to repair it? How am I going to do better next time? How am I going to fix the mess I made? And so a lot of all of my books, but particularly in Grow the Fuck Up, I do combine that the emotional reaction, that self-awareness, with then taking action to be responsible and to hold yourself accountable. So it's kind of a 2-step process of like.
Well, I think it's easier, certainly, if you've asked for it. I did some work the other day and had asked Sanger for feedback on it, and what I was wanting was him to hand me the work back and go, wow, this is really good. This is the best stuff I've ever seen. And that's not what happened. But it was really good, because I was like, well, I asked for this, this is what I'm wanting. I'm wanting this feedback. And he was providing me some constructive criticism of how I could make it better. And it was really helpful. But I think it's easy for us to get reactive when somebody's saying, hey, what you did wasn't perfect, or here's another perspective, to throw up a defensive wall so that you don't have to get self-aware. You don't have to, look inside and go, well, maybe there are some things I need to fix. It's easy to just discount that. I know people in my life who do that.
That's like work, that's emotional work that you have to do. And the difference, there's kind of a evolution in my book, but from actual baby, an actual baby who has no life experience, no responsibilities, hasn't learned how to behave or misbehave yet. And then you've got big fucking babies who are people like us who've had all the time in the world to learn how to do things properly and to be better, and just don't want to make the effort. And then you've got your theoretical grown-ups where we're like, we want to do well, but we just aren't, always that good at everything. And then the total fucking grown-ups who are the kind who can take that criticism and say, I did ask for that, and it doesn't make me feel bad, and I'm going to take those suggestions and I'm going to move on. And for me, I think that it's, in keeping with the theme of your podcast, it is about making the decision on the front end to say, I am going to walk into this and I am going to act like an adult, and I'm not going to throw a tantrum, and I'm not going to say, you're wrong, and then just, not take any of that advice and just stomp off and do it my way. I'm going to decide to take it in, think about it, to not be ridiculously reactive, and then move forward. And a lot of the time, when people are, and we've talked about this before, when people do something kind of rash or they get themselves into a bad situation, it's because they didn't just take 30 seconds, 2 minutes, 10 minutes to pause and decide on a better path. They just allowed themselves to be reactive. And decision making is not reactive; it's proactive. And so I think that everybody benefits from being able to just take a little bit of time, make better decisions, think about the outcomes, go for the best one. And that's that's just, to me, it seems like common sense, but I think a lot of people just aren't doing it because they're just not thinking it through.
Yeah, I think if you're not getting that feedback, and it not just getting it, but listening to it and internalizing it and becoming self-aware, your own decision-making framework is cloudy. Your ability to make good decisions, particularly if you're in a leadership position, if you can't lead yourself by taking feedback, evaluating that and saying, what can I learn from this? How can I make a decision to improve? Your ability to do that for others is greatly diminished over if you're elevating that.
Do you think that, there's got to be another way to become self-aware other than getting feedback and asking for feedback? What do you think allowed you to become self-aware other than people telling you what your problems are?
Yeah, it starts with you. And I have a little 3-step method in the book, and I call it the how, why, what method. How am I feeling? Why am I feeling that way? What can I do about it? And my point is that you can't go forward in this life and interact with other people and succeed professionally and thrive personally if you aren't first honest with yourself. And each of the chapters in the book is kind of a riff on something a parent might say. And this one is do you have something to tell me? Which is really about, be honest, like, what'd you do? What are you up to in there? And you have to really ask it of yourself. You have to be like, what is going on? What am I feeling? It's not just I'm feeling anxious. It's, am I afraid? Am I sad?
Yeah.
Am I resentful? Am I nervous about something? Okay, why am I feeling this way? What made me feel this way? And then what can I do to change it? Or what can I do to move forward? And that self-awareness is something that, a lot of people just don't know any better to cultivate in themselves. Like I said, they're ruled by reacting, and not by really reflecting. And that's something that is so easy to do. If somebody just tells you, if Sarah Knight tells you how to do it in the pages of these books, it's not hard. It really isn't. If somebody just says, hey, next time you're feeling a certain way, ask yourself, how am I feeling? why am I feeling this way and what can I do about it? It's a really simple way to get to that point of self-reflection. And then you're arming yourself with so much more capacity to get past it, get over it, change it, and get to a better place. I just think it's kind of the key to everything, self-awareness.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And it is easy. I think it takes some work to be able to do it effectively. I have a good friend of mine, and he was going through some stuff, and I asked him, I said, well, how are you feeling right now? And he goes, just busy. I'm like, dude, busy's not a feeling.
Nope, sure isn't.
And so let's try again. And I finally got him to, just think, okay, well, he was feeling overwhelmed, and that made him feel stressed, and that made him feel disappointed in himself. And so we really got to a good place. I was like, why are you feeling that way? And explore it, kind of like what you were saying, how are you feeling and why are you feeling that way? And then, the big question is, what do you do about it? Do you find that when you get to that point, what are you going to do about it? To me, that seems like the most difficult part, because then you have a decision to make to say, not only what am I going to do about it, but then I have to do it.
I mean, I actually think it's harder to get to the point of how am I feeling. I think that you're right in the sense that I maybe shouldn't use the word easy. What I mean is it's simple.
It's simple.
It's it's a simple question to ask yourself. It might be harder for one or the other of us to kind of really be willing to confront those feelings and figure out what's going on. Also, P.S. there's a mosquito buzzing around my head right now. So if I whack at the screen, don't take it personally.
Thank you. Thanks for clarifying. Thank you.
But when you get to that third step of what am I going to do about it, and you do have some decisions to make, one of the tricks that I talk about in Grow the Fuck Up is just imagine the worst case scenario. Write it down. If you're having trouble making a decision, what's the worst that could happen? Realistically, you can't say like, what if an asteroid falls on me while I, because I agreed to do this solo concert in front of 500 people. That's not realistic. But like, what's the worst that could happen? Because you agreed to do this solo concert in front of 500 people, maybe you forget the lyrics. That's like the worst thing that could happen. And in the end, are you gonna evaporate?
Are you gonna die?
Somebody gonna die? Maybe you'll get heckled. Maybe somebody will post a 1-star review, and then your life will go on. It will. So I think that it's really useful when you're trying to make a decision. For me, anyway, it's useful is to go to the very worst. What's the worst that could happen? And lots of the time, it's just not that bad. You will realize that the thing that's holding you back from pressing go on whatever decision you're making, whether it's somebody's reaction to your decision, or you might fail at the thing that you're going to try to do, or even if it's you're trying to decide where to have the party for your parents' 50th rehearsal dinner, and your siblings are arguing about it, and you're like, I'm just going to take some initiative and I'm going to decide. And what if the place sucks? Well, nobody else is making the decision. And if anybody else had stepped up to make the decision, they would have looked at the reviews, they would have gotten recommendations, they would have gone to the website, and they probably would have made the same decision you did because it looked good, And if it wasn't good, this isn't your fault. And so that's what I would say to people when they're getting to the point of, okay, what can I do about it? When you're trying to make those decisions, think about the worst that could realistically happen. It's probably not that bad. And then, it's easier to kind of press forward when you can demystify and just sort of defang these outcomes when you look at them, literally write them down. I'm a big fan of writing things down and confront it and go, that's not the end of the world. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do this thing now. Yeah,
it's a different version of, not awfulizing. There was somebody I used to work with that would awfulize everything. And every time we would go say, all right, we're going to do this ad campaign or whatever, he goes, if it doesn't work, we're not getting any clients. If we don't get any clients, we won't make money. If we don't make money, we're all going to die. Everything would end with, and we're all going to die,
Yeah.
So I just have to stop you and go, seriously, what is the worst that could happen?
Yeah, it's funny how we do that. I'll talk to clients about money decisions, and I might ask them what's holding you back from this, or what's the worst that could happen, or some variation of, how bad can this get? Right? Why are we so scared right now? Well, I mean, geez, we could have total economic collapse. And I go, then who gives a shit? If we have total, then whatever you did with your money doesn't matter. If we have 3,000% inflation, Sanger, well, okay, then I guess no matter what stock you bought, it sucks.
Right.
You got bigger problems.
You have bigger problems. I remember talking to a client 3 years ago about this. Well, I guess it was more like January of 2020. And she said to me, well, how is this virus going to impact the stock market? And at the time, before anyone in the U.S. even had the virus, I was like, look, I mean, if the virus impacts the stock market, we've got bigger problems. And a few months later, she's talking to me and goes, you know what, way back then you told me if the virus impacts the stock market, we've got bigger problems. And I said, yeah, turns out we've got bigger problems. You're right. Now I'm wearing a mask. Staying out.
Yeah, I often say to my husband, it's too bad because when I'm right, it usually means that something bad happened because I'm very much of like a pragmatist in that way. And I'll be like, well, this might happen. And when it does, it's not fun to be right. But I do think also that, the worst decision is no decision, right? If you're in that
100% agree.
They call it analysis paralysis. And you can't decide, I've been accepted to 4 different schools and I just don't know. Am I going to choose the right one? Like these are the pros, these are the cons. And what if I pick the wrong one and my life is a sham? And, it turns out that I should have, it's like, you don't get an alternate universe to go and see what is going to happen in each of these scenarios if you choose, University of Georgia or University of Pennsylvania. Like, you're just not going to know. And if you don't make a decision, then you never get to go to college. So
it's almost better to pick based on an arbitrary criteria than to not decide. Pick one, flip a coin. Oh, but that seems crazy. It's such a big decision. Well, it's better than you sitting here writhing indefinitely.
Well, a lot of people don't see not making a decision as a decision. And it really is. It's a decision, but it's a decision based on fear, and it may not be the best decision. So you make a decision based on some forward acting momentum and motivation that makes some sense, rather than just the default decision of not doing anything, which could be bad.
Yeah, and also have confidence in your priorities and your values. If we're looking at the, choosing a place to go to school, first of all, it's wonderful that you have this opportunity. And what's important to you. Now, what's important to you when you're 18 might not turn out to be the same thing that's important to you when you're 38, but join the club. At the time when you're making the decision.
You would hope not, right?
At the time when you're making your decision, if you have 3 or 4 kind of, equal, sort of seemingly equal on paper options, and that you really want to be in a big city. And that you don't want to be in a rural place, or you don't want to be, so pick the city one. Like, it's okay for you to say, this is what's important to me.
Yeah.
I remember when I was going through this, now 20 with something years ago, I went and visited one particular school, and I came back and I said, I don't like it. The sky's too close. And my father was like, what are you talking about? I was like, I didn't like it. I felt like the sky was really close. Like, I felt really like pinned in. And he was like, what are you? And I was like, whatever. The point is, I didn't like it. I can't imagine spending 4 years there. I don't want to go there. And it sounded ridiculous to him, but it was meaningful to me. And you have to take these data points and these personal values. And I think in our last episode, we talked a lot about prioritizing. And I was saying how I like to prioritize by urgency to get things done that are the most urgent, because otherwise it's easy to just kind of do the things that seem more fun, or do the things that seem easier. And I talk about prioritizing in all of my books, but in the case of Grow the Fuck Up, it's really about prioritizing like your values and deciding who you are, and it's okay to want something, and it's okay to not like something, and it's okay to use those likes and wants to, input into your own personal brain computer and make your decisions based on them. It's okay to live a value-driven life, and your values don't have to be the same as other people's.
It's okay, and it's necessary to live the best version of your life, to fully express who you are by living out your values. That's how you find purpose. Whenever I get stuck in decisions, which is not very often, I now have a little trick that Sean showed me. So the last time I got stuck with a decision that I couldn't make, and it was just going back and forth, was on the logo for my company. I was like, I have 2 great options. I don't know which one to pick. And it was taking me way longer than necessary to pick an option. So we sat down. Do you remember what you did?
Yeah, I do.
He pulled out a coin and he said, all right, listen, I got a coin in my hands. You're going to call it. Okay, heads is the first logo, tails is the second logo. Now, this is actually what you're going to do. You can't take it back. Okay, no matter what it lands on, that's the logo of your company. Do you understand? And I was like, all right, okay, well, we're going to get it done. In the air, he throws it, it lands, it goes, it's heads. I go, fuck it, no, we're doing tails. Like, I was like, no, and I instantly knew. And I just did that last week with a friend of mine. I was like, hey, you want to go?
The thing is, in the air.
As soon as
in the air,
something that you have to recognize the reality. I did that just last weekend with where do you want to go out to eat with a friend?
I do this frequently with my husband on where do you want to go out to eat. He'll be like, we could do this, we could do that, we could do this, we could do that. And I'll be like, you decide. And he'll be like, okay, this. And I'm like, nope. That. It's like, I knew you had an opinion.
Yeah. You have an opinion once you're forced to face the reality. It's like sometimes
it's a great trick.
It's hard to maybe it's hard to visualize the reality when we haven't decided. Right? You haven't really chosen to visualize it, and that's what's preventing you from being confident in the decision.
I think there's always those moments that you look back on, you say, well, that's when I had to make that decision, like the coin flip. That's when I know. I was, looking at the title of your book, Sarah, I started thinking, well, when did I know I was a grown up? When did it, do I have a defining moment when I thought, okay, I'm a grown up? And I had an answer. I remember calling my friend Gene. This is at the first house I bought. And I called him and I said, dude, and I'm, I don't know, I'm in my mid-20s. And I said, dude, I think I'm a grown up. And he goes, why? What do you mean? I said, I'm sitting here in a house that I bought and there's a guy outside mowing my yard for me that I'm paying. I'm like, I've made it. This is all I took.
That's a moment.
It was a moment. Did you have moments like that you were reflecting on as you were writing, that you were like, oh, okay, this was important for me? That like I remember when I was a grown up.
I've made it here.
I've made it.
Yeah, I mean, in particular, that home ownership thing is a big one, and not everybody's gotten there yet, and maybe won't get there yet. But I just remember being way more nervous the day I signed my first mortgage agreement than the day I got married. Like, I was like, oh yeah, marriage, like it's a permanent thing that we're doing. Yeah, no problem. Happy about that. And when I was like signing my name on a giant loan from a bank, I was like, this is so adult. My husband, who just has a different temperament than I do, he was like, it's just math. He's like, have you ever not paid your rent? I said, nope. He's like, it's just, we did the math and the mortgage payment is less than the rent. So if you've never not paid your rent, then you're probably gonna be fine and you don't have to worry about it. And I was like, oh, that's a very good point. But I did feel very adult that day for sure. I also think that, there's adult stuff that isn't the traditional, buying a house or having a kid of your own or something like that, those traditional societal markers. But just like when you solve a problem for yourself, and I write in the book a lot about being resourceful and taking initiative and like not waiting around for somebody else to do it for you. Like when you're a kid, you wait around for your parents to do stuff for you because you don't know how to do them yet. You haven't developed those skills. But now that you have them, it can just feel so satisfying to use them. And, it's the kind of thing where the more resourceful you are, the better you are at getting things done and presenting the finished product to your colleagues or to your partner, then the more trust and respect those people will have for you. And the more they'll stay off your case, when you're working on something, because they're like, I can depend on her, she's going to get that done because she's resourceful and reliable and she'll figure it out. And I don't have to kind of hover over her and poke her and drive her crazy. And these are the benefits of acting like an adult. It's like some people are going to look at it as work, and they're going to look at it as an overwhelming amount of responsibility. They're going to say, I don't want to. But if you actually accept that responsibility into your life, you can make good things happen for yourself because everybody wants an adult on their side. I want to live in a world full of people who are dependable and self-aware and who can take initiative, who can apologize for their mistakes. Like, who doesn't want to live in that world? So, the effort that we put in to doing that and deciding that, it's worth it really comes back tenfold.
Yeah. I think most parents don't look at their kids and consider them grown up until those kids have kids. I think, they always think, it's that, there's that defining moment. I think I remember when I realized that my dad considered me an adult, a big purchase I was considering. And I talked to him. I said, hey, so this is a lot of money. I'm thinking about doing this. And he's just like, it's your money. I mean, what do you want to do? Yeah. It's like, which was super not helpful at all, but wasn't great advice. But it was a defining moment.
Realized that it was absolutely not his problem. He didn't care.
Right.
If you screwed it up, it was like not going to matter.
Exactly. He had no ownership or connection to it. He's like, oh, whatever you want. No skin off my nose. I mean, basically.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, oh, okay. And it caused me, though, to reevaluate that decision so much differently. I'm like, oh, I'm not a kid. Nobody's going to come bail me out. This is my decision that I've got to grow up and take ownership of. And so it was interesting that this crappy advice turned out to really be defining for me and turned out to be good advice in a weird way.
I like how you focus on responsibility so much, Sarah. I think that's it's such an integral component of living a purposeful life. I think, to have purpose and to find that purpose means to be responsible to something, right? Even if you're responsible to yourself and for yourself, you've got to be responsible to find purpose. And people who want to have a life of no responsibility at all, their biggest complaint with that lifestyle is, I've got no purpose. I see it all the time with people who retire and they go, oh man, back in the day when I had purpose, when I had some reason to get up every morning. And when that's missing, when that responsibility is missing, it's a big, big problem. And I think that that you don't have to do the traditional societal steps to become an adult, get married, have kids, buy a house to be an adult. You don't have to do those things. It's not in the cards for everyone, but we have to understand why those are the traditional steps. And they're the traditional steps because they all involve a great degree of responsibility. I mean, owning a home you're responsible for a really important thing. Getting married, you're responsible to and for another person. Having children, you're responsible for these they're going to die without you. Well, it's a big thing of responsibility. So I think there's some people who, yes, will say, if you're not doing those things, you're not, really living. You have to go through the normal steps. And I don't agree with that, but there are other people who reject it entirely and say, I'm not going to do any of these things. They're worthless steps in life, period. So I reject them. Well, before you reject them, recognize what they represented and try to find that somewhere else in your life.
Yeah. And, it all kind of ties into being responsible, taking responsibility, accepting, like you were saying, nobody's going to bail me out. Like I have to kind of take on the responsibility of these decisions that I'm making. And when if you are somebody who says, I just don't want to have to do anything. I don't subscribe to any of those societal, adulting points that we just talked about. And I want to just sit back and let everybody else make the decisions and let everybody else do everything for me and barely lift a finger. Mm-hmm. For a while, might that seem like a liberating way of life? I suppose it might. But eventually, you're going to make your life very small because most people don't really want to spend time with and don't really respect somebody who is essentially, announcing to the world, I'm lazy, I don't care about anything. It's not even like I'm saying you have to go and be, the top salesman at your company. But just like the attitude of I reject all responsibility is not an appealing attitude. And it's going to make you less appealing to people, and it's going to provide you with fewer opportunities. And at some point, I do think that you will sit back and go, maybe I missed out, by being, in the parlance of my book, a big fucking baby. You know, so it's worth it also, like I said earlier, to figure out what your values are and to, you know, put your efforts at being responsible onto those. It doesn't have to be the same values that other people have, but like you said, have a purpose, because that's attractive in a person. You know, those are the people that I want to be my friends and my coworkers, and that I want to entrust with the responsibility for my career. And, you know, I want people who, you know, are comfortable with the idea of both being responsible, doing what they said they were going to do when they said they were going to do it, but taking on responsibility and, you know, realizing that we're not just 8-year-olds anymore who can go around and not have any consequences.
So how are you doing that in your life? Obviously, you're responsible for things like, I mean, writing a book requires a lot of discipline, and you're responsible to at least the idea of the project, right? If I was living in the Dominican Republic, I feel like I would have a harder time being a responsible person, because the temptation of chilling out on the beach is like so ripe and so right there.
Yeah, I mean, the issue is that once you live here, you have it available all the time. So it doesn't feel, it's like you will, there certainly is an adjustment period where you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I never want to be inside again. I want to be outside in the sun, you know, on the beach all day. But like when it's available all the time, I don't miss it when I have to, you know, focus on my work, and that, because I know it's there for me. It's not like it's a 2-week vacation where I only have 14 days. So I have to spend all of them doing
you got to go on the beach, rain or shine.
You know? And also, as it turns out, it is very hard to keep up a vacation drinking schedule when you are living and working.
It's permanent, yeah.
I think it was a little bit of a surprise to the people that my husband and I met in this town. We were coming here for about 1.5 years before our house was finished. And I think they were very surprised once we moved here that we weren't going out as much. Because they met vacation Sarah. You know, they didn't meet they didn't meet I have a job Sarah. So I think ultimately it actually isn't that hard, because you know you have it there, you know, in your back pocket.
That makes a fair point. Yeah, eventually, you know, maybe you get sick of the beach.
I would say I get sick of the beach, but like
you
know,
it's like you're not getting cupcakes all day long, right?
Yeah, I know that I can reward myself with it when I've done my work. And this is another thing about being an adult, you know, finish your chores and you can go play. It's the same thing, except that the chores are not necessarily like clearing the table and taking out the trash and walking the dog. They're like finishing a chapter of your book, or, you know, paying your bills, or, you know, finishing your taxes, which I just did. Huge. And then you can go play is like, you can go do a nice thing, and a thing that you decided you were going to do because you're the adult and you're the boss and you've got the money and you're in charge of your own schedule, and so you can reward yourself. And so I would reward myself.
I do that.
With.
I'll like, you know, all right, I've got to make these 5 calls, or I've got to finish this project before I go, you know, go walk the dog or do something I want to do. I'll force myself to finish these short-term projects, but make it kind of doable, make it something that I can finish in the next hour or something like that. Do you find, Sarah, when you're writing, and I know a lot of the writing that you do comes from your own experience, your own point of view, your own sort of personal advice. Have you ever found that as you've committed something to writing, and I think, you know, as you write something down, it really sort of solidifies what you think about something, that once you've put it to paper, you go, I don't know about that. Once you start to really solidify what it is that you're trying to express, that you sort of go, I don't know that I think that at all.
Yeah, the writing process is very mysterious, and it's very personalized and individualized. So my experience might not be the same as for others, but for me, it's more about, like, I usually have something that I want to get across, and I know what I want to get across. And I'll put it down. And because I'm in the business of, you know, teaching other people how to do things and giving advice on how to get it done, I sometimes have ignored points like A through D, and I'm all the way at E. And my editor says to me, like, your E is great. E is a great point, but you got to really go backwards and show people how to get there. Like, you've made a leap that you've made because you know how to do this and you feel comfortable with it, but you need to help other people get there. And like when I was writing Get Your Shit Together, and I was talking about, you know, the first thing you do is you set a goal. And, that's so obvious. That's how you do it. And my editor was like, yeah, but how do you set a goal? It's like, what do you mean, how do you set a goal? You decide you want to do something and that's your goal. And he was like, it's not so easy for everyone. So I had to go back and kind of really, really like think, so how do I get to this point? And tease out all of the little steps that are kind of automatic for me. So that is definitely, part of the process where like, I think I'm saying something but I haven't led the horse to water yet. So that's something that I have to work on. I rarely change my mind when I've made a proclamation. I'm pretty confident in the things that I'm saying, but I definitely rely on my husband, my literary agent, my editor, the people who read the manuscripts along with me before they ever go to print. I rely on them saying, have you thought about it this way? Have you considered this point? Somebody who's coming at it from this way might not think of it the same as you. And that does help me kind of make sure that sometimes I rewrite things to be more inclusive, to be like, hey, you, the reader, you might not have the same experience that I do. Note that I am not telling you how to live your life. I am saying that this has worked for me and it might work for you. So I do kind of rely on other people to check my grand proclamations and to be like, are you sure that is going to make sense to everybody who might be reading? And I'm like, oh, it might not. Okay. So it's a collaborative thing, but I'm on the hook, for every sentence that appears in these books. So at the end of the day, like I do have to make decisions and be like, I am okay with that. I'm okay with that joke, and sometimes people don't like my jokes and they give me 1-star reviews. And I'm like, sorry, I made a joke about vegans. Like, I stand by the joke.
For that one.
Does that happen to you a lot, saying people don't like your jokes?
Everyone loves them all the time.
Oh, really? Is that right?
Yeah, that's one of my more enduring hate mail things.
The people
they're a rabid group. They really are. They are committed to the cause, and for that, I've got to at least respect them.
I'm going to give you this just because I know we're running low on time. The joke in the book is, I'm not telling you how to live your life like some goddamn vegan. and so people will write to me and be like, I was with you until you made that joke. And just so you know, and then they give me all of the reasons why veganism is the only way to be. And I must be an animal hater and this and that. And I was like, you're making my point.
Yeah.
Like, I got no problem with somebody who's a vegetarian, who's a vegan, on a restrictive diet, does gluten, whatever. I don't care. It's that you won't stop telling me that I should be doing it too. That's joke.
So, yeah. Evangelical vegans.
Right
they're evangelical vegans.
So with apologies to any vegans who may be listening who are not evangelical about it, and I appreciate you guys. I see you out there too. But it is really shocking to me that people will take the time to write to me about that joke and prove my point in doing so.
Well, we're going to wrap that way. Sean and I can go get some steak. Sarah, where can people find you and get a copy of Grow the Fuck Up?
They can find me at sarahknight.com. That's Knight, Knight. And yeah, Grow the Fuck Up is being published April 4th everywhere. So you should be able to go to your local bookstore or order from Amazon or Barnes & Noble or, wherever you get your books, ebooks, audiobooks. I narrate the audiobook myself. So if you like listening to me talk, get the audiobook.
That's perfect. This will be a good preview then.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, thanks so much. Thanks for being with us, Sarah.
Okay. Thanks so much, guys. Have a good one.
It was good to talk to Sarah again. My takeaway from our discussion with her is that when we're looking at asking ourselves how we're feeling, we need to get sincere about that. What is that feeling that we are experiencing? And then why are we feeling that way? So if I'm feeling angry, why am I feeling that way? Well, maybe it's I feel threatened or I feel insecure. What is it? So that I can then address it and say, what am I going to do about it? So that I either explore that more, resolve the issue, but the more I become self-aware of those experiences, the better I can deal with them, the better I can lead others, and the more control I am of those, the better decisions I'll make.
I think that my takeaway was on responsibility. She talked about it as one of the 3 keys to becoming an adult. And it's true. It's like, did I know that within my soul that I know that subconsciously? Yeah, I think I probably did, but I don't articulate it enough. So finding responsibility is not only a key component to becoming an adult, but it's something that we should consistently pursue. Is find something to be responsible for. It'll make you a better person.
You just made a great decision to listen to this episode of Decidedly. Make another great decision and leave us a 5-star review wherever you listen to podcasts. We appreciate your support. It helps others find our community and defeat bad decision-making in their own lives. For more daily decision-making insights, check us out at decidedlypodcast.com and on Facebook and Instagram at Decidedly Podcast. Thanks again for listening. I'm Sanger Smith, and this is Decidedly.
Insights, advice, and comments provided by Sean Smith, Sanger Smith, and speakers identified as part of the Decidedly podcast should not be considered recommendations. Speakers not identified as members of Decidedly are expressing their opinion, and their statements should not be construed as reflecting the views of the Decidedly team. This podcast is produced solely for informational purposes, not personalized advice.